Jennifer stared at the bank statement in her trembling hands, her world crumbling around her. The numbers didn't lie, $5,000 withdrawn from their joint account in a single week. The truth she'd been avoiding for months finally crystallized. Tom's business investments were nothing but a facade for his gambling addiction. She remembered the night 3 months ago when he'd first come home late, reeking of cigarettes and cheap whiskey. His eyes had been wild with excitement as he'd bragged about winning big at poker. Just a one-time thing with the guys from work, he'd assured her. Jennifer had believed him then, wanted to believe him. Now, sitting at their kitchen table at 2 a.m., that memory felt like a knife twisting in her gut. Their friends had started noticing changes. Last weekend at David and Sarah's barbecue, Tom had spent the entire time checking his phone, his leg bouncing nervously under the table. Sarah had pulled Jennifer aside, concern etched on her face. "Is everything okay with you two?" she'd asked. Jennifer had forced a smile and blamed work stress, but Sarah's knowing look told her the lie hadn't landed. The signs had been there all along. The mysterious late-night calls he'd take in the garage. The sudden interest in sports statistics. The way he'd changed the password on his phone. The mounting credit card bills he'd insisted on handling himself. Jennifer had ignored them all, telling herself that marriages went through rough patches, that trust was about giving your partner space. But now, looking at the statement that proved her worst fears, Jennifer felt something inside her harden. She thought about their dreams, the house renovation they'd planned, the vacation fund they'd been building, the future they'd mapped out together. All of it potentially gambled away while she played the role of the trusting wife. A notification lit up her phone, another credit card declined. Jennifer's hands shook as she opened their banking app. The sight that greeted her made her blood run cold. Their savings account, meant for emergencies, was nearly empty. 10 years of careful planning, of brown bag lunches and skipped vacations, gone in what looked like a series of late-night withdrawals at various casinos. The sound of Tom's key in the front door made her stomach lurch. She could smell the familiar mix of cigarettes and alcohol before he even entered the kitchen. His tie was loose, his usually pristine dress shirt wrinkled. The sight of him, disheveled, guilty, yet somehow still wearing that boyish grin that had made her fall in love with him, sparked something between rage and heartbreak in her chest. "Jenny. Why are you still up, babe?" His words slurred slightly as he dropped his keys on the counter. The casual normality of the gesture, as if he hadn't just emptied their savings, made her want to scream. Instead, she placed the bank statement on the table between them like a gauntlet. "We need to talk about this, Tom." Her voice came out steadier than she felt. His face changed instantly, the fake cheerfulness replaced by something darker. "You've been going through my things." The accusation in his tone made her flinch, but she held her ground. "There are things, Tom. Our accounts. Our money. Our future." Each word felt like glass in her throat. "What happened to the savings account?" He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture she'd once found endearing but now recognized as a tell for his lies. "It's just temporary. I've got a system, Jenny. You wouldn't understand, but I'm about to turn it all around. One big win and we'll be set for life." The delusion in his voice terrified her more than any anger could have. This wasn't her Tom speaking, this was someone else, someone gambling had created. As she watched him pace the kitchen, making grand promises about doubling their money, Jennifer realized with crystal clarity that she was losing him. Not just to gambling, but to a version of himself that scared her. Her phone buzzed again, another credit card notification. As Tom continued his frantic monologue about sure bets and systems, Jennifer's mind raced ahead. She needed to protect herself, but how? The man standing before her wasn't the same one she'd married, yet somewhere beneath the addiction, her Tom was still there. Could she save him without destroying herself in the process? A text from Sarah lit up her phone. "Tried calling earlier. Really worried about you guys. Let's have coffee tomorrow." Jennifer stared at the message, a plan beginning to form. She needed allies, information, and most importantly, she needed to understand exactly how deep this rabbit hole went before confronting Tom with the full truth. Tomorrow, she decided, she would start digging. The coffee shop buzzed with morning activity, but Jennifer barely noticed the chaos around her. She sat across from Sarah, clutching her latte like a lifeline as she finally let the truth spill out. "He's gambling everything away, Sarah. Everything we've worked for." Sarah reached across the table, squeezing Jennifer's trembling hand. "How bad is it?" The genuine concern in her friend's voice made Jennifer's carefully maintained composure crack. "I don't even know the full extent," Jennifer admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "The savings are gone, but there's more. Credit card bills I haven't seen, calls from numbers I don't recognize. He's changed all our online banking passwords." Sarah's expression darkened. "Have you talked to a lawyer?" When Jennifer shook her head, Sarah pulled out her phone. "My sister used this one during her divorce. She's tough but fair." She paused, choosing her next words carefully. "You need to protect yourself, Jen. Before there's nothing left to protect." The word divorce hit Jennifer like a physical blow. Is that where this was heading? The thought made her nauseous, but Sarah's words echoed in her mind as she drove to work. Protect yourself. The phrase took on new meaning when she opened her work email to find a notice from their mortgage company. Jennifer stared at the screen, confusion turning to horror as she read the message again. There was a new home equity line of credit opened against their house, one she had no memory of approving. Her hands shook as she dialed the mortgage company's number. 20 minutes and several security questions later, Jennifer sat at her desk, shock giving way to rage. The loan had been opened 3 weeks ago, with what appeared to be her forged signature. 60% of their home's equity, gone. The customer service representative's voice had been sympathetic but firm. "Mrs. Walker, both signatures are on the documentation. If you're claiming fraud, you'll need to file a police report." Jennifer's mind raced. A police report would mean criminal charges. The end of Tom's career. Possibly jail time. Was she ready to destroy his life? The rational part of her brain screamed that he'd brought this on himself, but her heart ached at the thought of Tom in handcuffs. She left work early, driving home in a daze. The house, their dream home, looked different now. Every brick, every shingle represented years of hard work, sacrifices they'd made together. And Tom had gambled more than half its value away without a second thought. He was home when she arrived, sitting at the kitchen table with papers spread out before him. The sight of him doing what appeared to be actual work made her blood boil. How many other lies was she living with? "We need to talk about the home equity loan, Tom." She watched his shoulders tense, saw the millisecond of panic cross his face before he composed himself. "Jenny, I was going to tell you." He stood up, arms spread in a placating gesture. "It's just temporary. I needed some capital for an investment opportunity. It's going to pay off big, I promise." "Investment opportunity?" Jennifer's laugh sounded hysterical even to her own ears. "Don't lie to me anymore. I called the mortgage company. I know my signature was forged." Tom's face changed, friendly concern morphing into something ugly. "You went behind my back. Checked up on me like I'm some kind of child. You forged my signature." Jennifer's voice rose to match his. "You stole from our future. Those equity loans papers. That's fraud, Tom. It's a crime. I did it for us." He slammed his hand on the table, making her jump. "You don't understand the pressure I'm under. Everyone watching me, judging me, waiting for me to fail. I just needed a chance to prove myself, to make things right." "Make things right?" Jennifer felt dizzy with disbelief. "You're talking about gambling with our house. The house we spent 10 years saving for." "It's not gambling when you have a system," Tom insisted, his eyes taking on that familiar, frightening gleam. Jenny, baby, listen. I've got it all figured out. 2 more weeks, that's all I need. I've been studying the patterns, working the odds. 1 big win and we'll have double what I borrowed. Jennifer stared at him, really looked at him, and for the first time saw him clearly. This man, this stranger wearing her husband's face, was completely lost to his delusion. The realization chilled her to her core. There is no system, Tom, she said quietly. You're sick. You need help. His face contorted. Help? From you? Little Miss Perfect who's never taken a risk in her life. Who's so busy judging me she can't see the opportunity right in front of us. Each word felt like a slap. Jennifer remembered the mortgage broker who'd approved them for their first home loan, praising their excellent credit scores. She thought about the promotions she'd earned through careful work, the respect she'd built in her career. All the smart, responsible choices that Tom now threw in her face as failures. I'm calling your parents, she said, pulling out her phone. They need to know what's happening. We all need to talk about getting you into treatment. Tom moved faster than she expected, snatching the phone from her hand. You're not calling anyone. This is between us, and I'm handling it. Standing there, watching him clutch her phone like a lifeline, Jennifer felt something inside her break. The man she'd married, the one who'd held her hand through her father's funeral, who'd celebrated every small victory with her, who'd promised to grow old with her on their front porch, that man was gone. I'm staying at Sarah's tonight, she said, her voice steady despite the trembling in her hands. When I come back tomorrow, we're going to have a real conversation about our options. All of them. The threat in those last 2 words hung in the air between them. As Jennifer packed an overnight bag, she could hear Tom in the kitchen, his voice getting louder as he argued with someone on the phone. Just before she walked out the door, she heard him say words that would change everything. I don't care what it takes. Get me another loan. I need 50 grand by Friday. Sarah's guest room felt like a refuge and a prison at the same time. Jennifer lay in the unfamiliar bed, staring at the ceiling as her phone buzzed with another message from Tom. She didn't need to read it, the previous 20 had cycled between desperate apologies and angry accusations. Each one made her feel sick to her stomach. The sound of soft knocking drew her attention. Sarah stood in the doorway, holding 2 glasses of wine. I thought you could use this, she said, settling on the edge of the bed. David's got the kids at soccer practice. We can talk. Jennifer sat up, accepting the wine gratefully. I keep thinking I'm going to wake up and discover this was all a nightmare. She took a long sip, letting the warmth of the alcohol steady her nerves. How did I not see it coming? Because you trusted him, Sarah replied simply. That's what you're supposed to do in a marriage. She paused, choosing her next words carefully. But now you need to trust yourself. Jennifer's phone buzzed again. Tom's face appeared on the screen, their wedding photo, both of them laughing as they fed each other cake. She turned the phone face down. I accessed our credit report this morning, she said quietly. He's opened 3 new credit cards I didn't know about. Maxed them all out. Our credit score has dropped 200 points. Sarah's expression hardened. Jenny, I need to tell you something. David saw Tom at the River Rock Casino last month. He was with someone. A woman. The wine glass nearly slipped from Jennifer's fingers. What? Who? He didn't recognize her. But Tom was very friendly with her. David didn't want to tell you without proof, but with everything else coming out. Jennifer felt the room spin. A woman. The final piece of betrayal she hadn't even considered. Her mind raced back through the past months, the late nights, the unexplained expenses, the new cologne she'd smelled on his shirts. The cards, she whispered, realization dawning. The charges aren't just for gambling. There are restaurant bills, hotel rooms. She couldn't finish the sentence. Sarah reached for her hand. You need to see something. She pulled out her tablet, opening a social media page. The woman who works the front desk at my gym. She posted these last week. Jennifer stared at the photos. They showed the casino's high roller lounge. In the background of one shot, barely visible but unmistakable, was Tom. His arm was around a blonde woman in a red dress. They were laughing at something together, his face close to hers in a way that made Jennifer's stomach turn. I need a lawyer, Jennifer said finally, her voice hollow. Not just for the gambling. For everything. Sarah nodded, already pulling up contacts on her phone. My sister's lawyer can see you tomorrow morning. But first, we need to get your finances sorted. Do you have any accounts in just your name? Jennifer shook her head, then stopped. Wait. My grandmother's inheritance. It's in a separate account. Tom wanted me to add him to it last year, but I never got around to it. A small smile, her first in days, crossed her face. He was so angry about that. How much? Almost 40,000. It's not much compared to what he's lost, but it's a start, Sarah finished. And it's safe from him. Now we need to focus on protecting whatever's left. They spent the next hours making lists, building a strategy. Jennifer called in sick to work the next day, scheduling appointments with the lawyer and her bank. She created a new email account, one Tom couldn't access. Sarah helped her gather important documents, birth certificate, marriage license, insurance policies, and store them safely away from the house. What about the house? Sarah asked gently. With the equity loan, you're underwater now. You can't afford it on your own. Jennifer felt tears threatening but forced them back. I know. But maybe that's for the best. Fresh start, clean break. She looked around the guest room, reality settling in. I might need to stay here longer than a few days. Stay as long as you need, Sarah assured her. David and I have your back. Jennifer's phone buzzed again, this time with a text from an unknown number. Her blood ran cold as she read it. Tell Tom he has until Friday to pay what he owes. We know where you both live. Sarah saw her face change. What is it? Jennifer handed her the phone, watching her friend's eyes widen. Loan sharks, Sarah breathed. Jenny, this is serious. We need to call the police. Not yet, Jennifer said, her mind racing. I need leverage first. Proof of everything, the gambling, the fraud, the affair. If I go to the police now, he'll find a way to twist it around. Make me look like the bad guy. I need to be smart about this. She opened her laptop, creating a new document. I'm going to write down everything. Dates, amounts, incidents. Everything I can remember. Her fingers flew over the keyboard as years of ignored red flags came flooding back. Then I'm going to call his parents. Sarah raised an eyebrow. Are you sure? They've always taken his side. They need to know how bad it is. And Jennifer paused, a plan forming. They have money. If they know loan sharks are involved, they might help. Not for me, but for him. To keep him out of trouble. And if they don't? Jennifer's expression hardened. Then I go to the police. Show them the forged loan documents. Let them investigate the credit card fraud. If Tom wants to destroy everything we built, fine. But he's not taking me down with him. She worked through the night, documenting everything. Each memory she wrote down felt like lancing a wound, painful but necessary for healing. By dawn, she had a comprehensive timeline of Tom's descent into addiction and deceit. As the sun rose, Jennifer stood at Sarah's kitchen window, watching the neighborhood come to life. Somewhere across town, Tom was probably just getting home from another night at the casino, or maybe from the blonde's apartment. The thought didn't hurt as much as she expected. Her phone buzzed one final time, another threat from the loan sharks. But this time, instead of fear, Jennifer felt something else, determination. She'd spent years being the supportive wife, the understanding partner. Now it was time to be something else, a survivor. The law office of Patricia Martinez radiated quiet competence. Jennifer sat across from the attorney, watching her face as she reviewed the documentation. 3 days of meticulous gathering had produced a damning pile of evidence: bank statements, credit card bills, loan documents, threatening text messages, and photos from social media. "This is comprehensive," Patricia said finally, looking up from the papers. "The forged signature on the home equity loan alone is enough for criminal charges. Add in the credit card fraud and gambling debts." She let the sentence hang. "I don't want him in jail," Jennifer said quietly. "I just want to protect myself." Patricia's expression softened slightly. "Mrs. Walker, based on these threats you've received, protection might mean prosecution. These aren't casual gamblers he's involved with. These are dangerous people." As if on cue, Jennifer's phone lit up with another message. This one included a photo, Tom outside their house, clearly taken that morning. The text beneath it was simple: "Time's running out." Jennifer pushed the phone across the desk. Patricia's eyes narrowed as she read. "We need to get a restraining order. Not just against your husband, but against his associates. And we need to move quickly on the divorce filing. The longer we wait." A commotion in the outer office interrupted her. Jennifer heard a familiar voice arguing with the receptionist, then the door burst open. Tom stood there, disheveled and wild-eyed, his usually immaculate suit wrinkled and stained. "Jenny, baby, thank God." His words slurred slightly. "I've been looking everywhere for you. You have to come home. We can fix this." Patricia stood, her voice sharp. "Mr. Walker, this is a private consultation. You need to leave immediately." Tom ignored her, focusing on Jennifer. "I messed up, okay? I admit it. But I've got a plan. Remember that development deal I told you about? It's real. The investor's ready to move forward. We just need some startup capital." Jennifer felt ice in her veins. "What investor, Tom? What development deal?" "Mark introduced me to him. At the casino. He's legitimate, Jenny. He's got projects all over the city." Tom stepped forward, his desperation palpable. "He just needs $50,000 to secure the permits. Then we double our money in 6 months." "Mark?" Jennifer's voice cracked. "The loan shark who's been threatening us. That's your legitimate investor." Patricia moved toward the door, presumably to call security, but Tom's next words stopped everyone cold. "I sold the beach house," he blurted out. "The one your parents left you. Mark knew a cash buyer. The deal closes Friday." The room spun. Jennifer gripped the arms of her chair. "You, what? That house isn't even in your name. You can't sell it." Tom's laugh had an edge of hysteria. "Power of attorney, remember? When you were sick last year. You signed it. Never revoked it." His expression turned pleading. "Jenny, it's done. But it's good news. The sale will clear my debt with Mark, and with the development deal. Get out." Jennifer's voice was barely a whisper. "Baby, please. Get out." She was on her feet now, shaking with rage. That house was all I had left of them. Their memories, their dreams for us. And you sold it to pay your gambling debts. Security finally arrived, escorting a protesting Tom from the office. Jennifer collapsed back into her chair, her mother's voice echoing in her head, "Take care of the beach house, sweetheart. It's your legacy, your piece of paradise." Patricia waited until Jennifer's breathing steadied before speaking. We can stop the sale. Power of attorney or not, this is clear fraud. But we need to act now. Jennifer wiped her eyes, steel entering her voice. Do it. Stop the sale, freeze all the accounts, whatever it takes. And Patricia? File the criminal charges. All of them. Are you sure? Once we start down that road. He sold my parents' house. Jennifer's laugh held no humor. To a loan shark. While I was sitting here trying to protect him. She stood, gathering her purse. I need to make some calls. The rest of the day passed in a blur of legal maneuvers. Patricia's team worked quickly, filing emergency motions to block the house sale and freeze Tom's assets. Jennifer called Tom's parents, finally telling them everything. Their shocked silence spoke volumes. By evening, she was back at Sarah's, emotionally exhausted but resolute. Her phone had dozens of missed calls from Tom, plus a new message from Mark, your husband made promises. Someone's going to pay. She was about to turn off her phone when it rang again, an unfamiliar number. Against her better judgment, she answered. Mrs. Walker. A woman's voice, hesitant. You don't know me, but I think we need to talk. About Tom. About everything. Jennifer's hand tightened on the phone. The woman from the casino? In the red dress? A pause. Yes. And I'm not the only one. There are others. Other women, other deals, other debts. Things you need to know. Sarah, who had been listening nearby, reached for Jennifer's hand. But Jennifer felt strangely calm. Tell me everything, she said, pulling out her laptop to take notes. Start from the beginning. As the woman began to speak, laying bare the full extent of Tom's deceptions, Jennifer felt the last threads of her old life slipping away. But in their place, something new was forming, a determination to not just survive this betrayal, but to emerge stronger from it. The woman was still talking when Jennifer's email pinged, a message from Patricia. The subject line read, Emergency court order granted. Beach house sale blocked. It was a small victory, but right now, Jennifer would take it. As she listened to the litany of Tom's lies, she began planning her next moves. Tom had gambled with their future and lost. Now it was her turn to play the game, but she would play it smart, play it safe, and most importantly, play it to win. The conference room at Patricia's law office hummed with tension. Jennifer sat straight-backed, flanked by her attorney and Sarah, as Tom and his lawyer reviewed the divorce papers. The past week had been a whirlwind of legal actions, restraining orders filed, accounts frozen, criminal complaints submitted. Now, watching Tom's face as he read through the documents, Jennifer saw the moment he realized just how thoroughly she'd outmaneuvered him. This is ridiculous, he sputtered, shoving the papers away. She's trying to ruin me. After everything I've done for her. His lawyer, a nervous man named Gerald Wilson, placed a cautioning hand on his arm. Mr. Walker, please. Let's handle this professionally. Professionally? Tom's laugh held an edge of panic. She's filed criminal charges. Fraud, forgery, she's my wife. Everything I did for us. Patricia's voice cut through his protests like a blade. Let's review exactly what you did, Mr. Walker. Forged your wife's signature on a home equity loan. Attempted to sell property that wasn't yours to sell. Opened fraudulent credit accounts. Accumulated gambling debts with known criminals who are now threatening your wife's safety. She paused, shuffling through her papers. Shall I continue? Perhaps we should discuss the other women. The hotel receipts. The gifts purchased with joint funds. Tom's face went pale. His eyes darted to Jennifer, who met his gaze steadily. You've been busy, he said, his voice low. Digging through my private affairs. Building your little case. They stopped being private affairs when you put my name on fraudulent documents, Jennifer replied calmly. When you gambled away our future. When you brought loan sharks to our door. Speaking of loan sharks, Patricia interjected, my client has received multiple threats from your associates. That stops today, or we add witness intimidation to the criminal complaints. Gerald Wilson cleared his throat. Perhaps we could discuss a settlement. Mr. Walker is willing to enter rehabilitation. With the court support, we could. No. Jennifer's voice was firm. I've seen this pattern before. He promises to get help, makes a show of changing, then goes right back to gambling. I'm done enabling him. Tom's facade of control cracked. Enabling me? You self-righteous bitch. You think you're so perfect, so above it all. You have no idea what it's like, the pressure I'm under. I had to maintain our lifestyle, had to keep up appearances. By sleeping with other women. By selling my parents' beach house. Jennifer felt a calm sort of fury wash over her. No, Tom. You did those things because you wanted to. Because you thought you'd never face consequences. Mrs. Walker, Gerald interrupted, my client is prepared to be generous in the divorce settlement. Despite these allegations, he recognizes your contributions to the marriage. Patricia's laugh cut him off. Generous? With what money? Every account we've found is drained or overdrawn. The house has no equity left. Mr. Walker's gambling debts exceed his annual salary. She pulled out another document. And now we have statements from multiple women detailing how he spent joint funds on them. Generous isn't an option anymore. Tom slumped in his chair, the fight draining from him. What do you want, Jenny? You want to see me in jail? Will that make you happy? I want you to take responsibility for once in your life, Jennifer replied. I've made you an offer. Sign these papers. Agree to rehabilitation, real rehabilitation, not some weekend program. Give me a clean break and full cooperation with the fraud investigation. She leaned forward. Do that, and I won't push for jail time. And if I don't? Then I let the system handle you. The police already have the forged documents. The FBI is investigating the loan sharks. Your choice. A knock at the door interrupted them. Patricia's assistant entered, handing her a note. The attorney read it, then smiled. Well, this is interesting. The other Mrs. Walker is here. Tom's head snapped up. What? Lisa Walker? Your wife of 3 years. The one you married in Vegas while supposedly on a business trip. Patricia slid a marriage certificate across the table. Bigamy is a felony in this state, Tom. The color drained from Tom's face. Gerald Wilson stood abruptly. We need a moment. Jennifer watched them hurry from the room, Tom's desperate whispers to his lawyer echoing down the hall. Sarah squeezed her hand under the table. How long have you known? Sarah whispered. Since yesterday, Jennifer replied quietly. The woman from the casino, she's been doing some digging of her own. Turns out she wasn't the only one Tom lied to. Patricia gathered her papers, satisfaction evident in her movements. He'll sign now. Men like him always do when they realize the game is up. She paused, studying Jennifer. Are you sure about the rehabilitation offer? Given everything he's done, we could push for serious prison time. Jennifer thought about the man she'd married, the life they'd planned, the future that now lay in ruins. I want him to get help, she said finally. Not for him, for his parents, for any future relationships he might have. But I also want him to understand that actions have consequences. Her phone buzzed, another text from Mark the loan shark. But this time, instead of threats, it was just 3 words, deal is done. Jennifer smiled, showing the message to Patricia. Looks like Tom's parents came through. They're covering his gambling debts. Good, Patricia replied. That eliminates our most dangerous problem. Now we can focus on. The door burst open. Tom stormed in, his face a mask of fury. You set me up. All of this, the investigation, the other women coming forward, Lisa showing up, you orchestrated all of it. Jennifer stood, matching his anger with cold determination. No, Tom. You did this. Every lie, every betrayal, every stupid decision, that was all you. I just finally stopped covering for you. He deflated suddenly, collapsing into his chair. What do you want me to do? Jennifer slid the divorce papers across the table. Sign. Then pack your bags and check into the rehabilitation center Patricia recommended. 90 days minimum. If you complete the program, I won't press charges. And if I don't? Then I destroy you. The words came out calmly, matter-of-factly. Every fraud, every affair, every illegal deal, it all comes out. Your career, your reputation, your freedom, gone. Tom stared at her for a long moment, then reached for the papers. As he began to sign, Jennifer felt a weight lift from her shoulders. In trying to destroy their marriage, Tom had forced her to become stronger than she'd ever thought possible. Now, watching him sign away their future, she realized she wasn't just surviving, she was finally taking control of her life. 1 year later, Jennifer stood on the deck of her parents' beach house, watching the sunset paint the ocean in shades of gold and purple. The salt air carried memories of childhood summers, family barbecues, and her father's laugh. But now, those memories felt less like wounds and more like treasures to be cherished. Her phone buzzed, a text from Sarah, he's out today. Completed the full program this time. His mother says he's different. Jennifer set her wine glass on the railing, considering her response. Tom had indeed completed the 90-day rehabilitation program, then voluntarily extended his stay for another 3 months. According to his parents, who'd kept in touch despite everything, he'd finally confronted his demons. Good for him, she texted back. And she meant it. The divorce had been finalized 6 months ago. In the end, Tom had cooperated fully, signing over his claim to the beach house, agreeing to take responsibility for the gambling debts his parents had paid off, accepting the consequences of his actions. The criminal charges had been dropped in exchange for his completion of rehabilitation and full restitution of the fraudulent loans. The sound of footsteps on the deck drew her attention. Michael, her contractor, emerged from the house carrying blueprints. Jenny, got a minute? Need your input on the kitchen renovation. She smiled, remembering the day she decided to restore the beach house rather than sell it. The insurance money from her parents had sat untouched in her private account through all of Tom's schemes. Now it was bringing their beloved vacation home back to life. The structural work in the kitchen is completely done, Michael explained, spreading the plans on the deck table. But I had an idea about the island placement if you're open to it. Jennifer studied the blueprints, noting his suggested changes. Michael had been a godsend these past months, honest, reliable, and respectful of the home's history. The fact that he was handsome and single hadn't escaped her notice, but she wasn't ready. Not yet. These changes look perfect, she said, signing off on the revisions. My mother always said the kitchen was the heart of a home. She'd love what we're doing here. As Michael gathered the blueprints, her phone buzzed again. This time it was Patricia, her attorney, final restitution payment received. Case officially closed. Dinner to celebrate? Jennifer smiled. Patricia had become more than just her lawyer, she'd become a friend and mentor. The older woman's guidance had helped Jennifer navigate not just her divorce, but her own journey of rediscovery. After Tom's confessions and their divorce, Jennifer had thrown herself into rebuilding her life. She'd earned a promotion at work, started therapy to process her experiences, and slowly reclaimed her sense of self. The beach house renovation was part of that, turning a place of painful memories into a symbol of new beginnings. Looking forward to seeing the kitchen finished, Michael said, breaking into her thoughts. Place is really coming together. It is, Jennifer agreed. Though I'm thinking of making some changes to the guest house too. Maybe turn it into a rental property. Michael's eyes lit up. Smart move. This area's getting popular with vacation rentals. Could be a good investment. Investment. The word no longer made her flinch. She'd learned to trust her own judgment again, to make financial decisions without fear or guilt. The rental property idea was her own, a way to honor her parents' legacy while building something new. I'll draw up some plans, Michael offered. If you're interested. Their eyes met briefly, and Jennifer felt a flutter of possibility. Not now, but maybe someday. She'd learned the hard way that rushing into things never ended well. After Michael left, Jennifer walked down to the beach, letting the waves lap at her feet. A year ago, she'd stood in Patricia's office, shaking with rage as she discovered Tom's attempts to sell this place. Now here she was, sole owner and renovator, turning her parents' dream into her own. Her phone buzzed one final time, Tom's number. She hesitated before opening the message. I know it doesn't change anything, but I'm sorry. For everything. Thank you for pushing me to get help. I hope you're happy. Jennifer watched the sun sink below the horizon, considering whether to respond. The anger that had driven her through the divorce had faded, replaced by something closer to peace. Tom's actions had forced her to become stronger, to discover who she really was beyond the role of supportive wife. Finally, she typed, I am happy. I hope you find your peace too. Then she deleted his number. Walking back to the house, Jennifer paused to look at the renovation in progress. The new windows caught the last light of day, gleaming like possibilities. Inside, the updated kitchen waited for family gatherings yet to come. The guest house held potential for a new business venture. And somewhere in the future, perhaps, was room for new love, when she was ready, when it was right. But for now, this was enough. She had reclaimed her inheritance, her independence, and most importantly, herself. The woman who had once tried desperately to save a doomed marriage had become someone stronger, someone who knew her own worth and wasn't afraid to stand up for it. Sarah's words from that first night came back to her, trust yourself. Jennifer had learned to do exactly that. She'd survived Tom's betrayal not by becoming bitter, but by becoming better. Smarter. Stronger. Ready to write her own story. Inside the house, she pulled out her mother's old recipe box, another treasure she'd refused to let Tom sell. Tomorrow, she'd try making her mom's famous clam chowder. Maybe she'd invite Sarah and her family over, or Patricia, or even Michael. This house had always been meant for gathering, for building connections, for creating joy. Standing in the kitchen where she'd spent so many happy childhood moments, Jennifer felt truly at peace. The past year had taught her that sometimes losing everything you thought you wanted could lead you back to everything you really needed. She'd lost a husband but found herself. And in the end, that was the greatest victory of all.